All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Right.
Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy in arguments, just like running in circles like a mental treadmill, and I never get anywhere. So today we are talking about those unproductive arguments, and specifically these things called non sequiturs.
Non sequiturs. They're everywhere.
I don't even really know. Like, what is that?
So a non sequitur is basically like it's a conclusion or a statement that doesn't logically follow the previous argument.
Okay, so like,
It's like saying the sky is blue, therefore pineapple doesn't belong on pizza. They're
oh,
just
the white noise.
completely unrelated.
Yeah, and you sent me some excerpts that I've been looking at this week. And one of the things it says in here is that sometimes these arguments go nowhere because people are just digging in their heels. They don't want to change their views. And I feel like I've been in those arguments.
Yeah, and what's interesting is it's recognizing that there's a difference between a debate and a dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people aren't actually seeking understanding. They
Right.
just want to be right.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not about finding a solution or like common ground or anything. It's just about like, I'm right and you're wrong.
Exactly. And a lot of times that's when the non sequiturs come in because
Mhm.
they're trying to just kind of like throw anything at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you do when you're in that kind of situation? Our source mentioned something about not even trying to change the other person's mind.
Yeah, it's a really valuable reminder to choose your battles. Sometimes you just have to kind of recognize when someone's so entrenched in their position that it's okay to just agree to disagree.
Yeah.
It's not about giving up your own beliefs or anything, but it's about realizing that you're probably not going to change their mind in that moment.
It's about saving your sanity a little bit.
Absolutely.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
You're just like, that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It's like talking to a brick wall sometimes.
It really is. Sometimes it feels like they're wearing noise-canceling headphones on top of that brick wall.
Exactly. So on the topic of perseverance, you sent me a really great quote from Victor Hugo. And he says, even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. And it got me thinking, like, how does this apply to what we're talking about today?
I love that quote, and I think what's so powerful about it in this context is that it reminds us that even those really difficult, unproductive conversations, they do eventually end. It's like the sun rising. It's inevitable.
We hope.
And I think the key takeaway there is that it's about recognizing when it's time to just disengage from that conversation and move on to brighter topics.
Okay, so we've talked about kind of like stepping back and just being like, okay, this is not a productive conversation, but is there ever a time when you should actually try to push back against those non sequiturs?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It really depends on the context. If you get the sense that the other person is open to dialogue, then I think it can be really helpful to gently point out the logical disconnect.
So how would you do that?
You could say something like, I'm a little confused how that connects to what we were just talking about, or can you help me understand how those two things are related? Sometimes just highlighting the non sequitur can help the other person to see the flaw in their own reasoning.
So like leading them to the water but not making them drink it.
Exactly. We're just kind of like gently nudging them towards a little bit more logical thinking.
Okay, that's a good tip. So basically, we're just trying to be more aware of these non sequiturs when they happen, and then we can decide if we want to engage or try to kind of like redirect the conversation.
Exactly. It's all about being mindful in those conversations.
That's awesome. So for everyone listening, think back to a recent argument that you had that was just like, frustrating and pointless. Were there any non sequiturs in there? How do you think things might have gone differently if you had recognized them?
Yeah. And think about that Victor Hugo quote. Remember, even in the darkest of arguments, the sun will eventually come up.
I love that. That's a great way to end this deep dive. Everyone, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.